The body of a 19-year-old boy was found beside the road near Fredericktown on July 15, 2010. The police say it was a standard hit-and-run accident, but the autopsy, it tells a more sinister story. What happened to Doug Teel? Was it an accident or was it murder? This episode is brought to you by Chaos Rules in Madhouse Madison County, Missouri. This rural community should be a safe place, but it hides a dark secret. Fredericktown is one of the most dangerous places to live in America. With a crime rate of 31 per 1,000 residents, Fredericktown has one of the highest crime rates compared to all communities of all sizes. I started researching one case sent to me by a desperate grandmother that led me to 15 more. Then I realized this county has had murder, corruption, and chaos since before the Wild West days. This book will start with the lynching by a Fredericktown mob in 1844 and will end up in an explosion. Hold on to your seats when you read this one. You're in for a wild, chaotic ride through rural Missouri. Check out my new book, Madhouse Madison County, today. Today we are going to be talking about Doug Teel. He was a 19-year-old kid that was killed just outside of Fredericktown, Missouri. We have talked about the disturbing case of Durante Martin. You'll have to look at that case because there's so many details. Then you have Timmy D's. So you've got all of these cases stacking up where law enforcement in this area have either just dismissed the case or they seem to label it. They like to mislabel things and maybe just take the easiest way out. Well, they did this to themselves, so we don't have to investigate, or it has something to do with the drug community, so they'll take care of themselves. And, we've heard this over and over again. And so here's another case out of the same area that is just as disturbing. The details are a little bit different than the other cases. But again, it's a case that seems like there's too many questions for it to not be investigated. And so Douglas Teel was 19 years old. He was still in high school, but he also had a job. He was a salesman. He sold these knife kits, and he was doing pretty good. It was one of those pyramid scheme type things that you start selling a product and you get your friends signed up underneath you, and then you get a commission off of their products and their sales too. And so he was doing pretty good. And as of July 15th, 2010, he had just come from a party basically that was held in his honor because he had done so well with his sales that his company had a party, a little get together at Applebee's to give him some awards and to give him a promotion and all these things because he was doing really well. And so he ended up at a friend's house later that night, where he was there and they had dropped off other people, and there's a whole rigmarole of things that they did before, but basically somewhere between 12:30 and 1:30, because the reports are different, they arrived at this person's house. And this Anderson's, we'll call him Mr. Anderson's house. And it was kind of an odd story. Anderson was supposed to take Douglas on home. And instead of doing that, he claimed he didn't have enough gas. There was something wrong with his gas tank, and he didn't think he could make it to the 4 to 6 miles to Doug's house. And there was a little bit of an argument ensued with Anderson and some of the people that were at his house. And finally, Doug just said, "Screw it! I'll walk myself home. It's not that big a deal." He had a vehicle that he shared with other family members, and at this point he didn't have it, but he was used to walking the 4 to 6 miles into town all the time, so it wasn't that big a deal to him. So he decided he was going to walk home in the wee hours of the morning. So according to some phone records and text messages, he left Anderson's house at approximately 1:47 a.m. and he started heading home. Now, according to law enforcement, it was a 4.4 mile walk. According to Google Maps, it is closer to 6 miles. Either way, he should have been home within an hour and a half to 2 hours at the most, just at a leisurely walking pace. He should have been home by 3:30. Unfortunately, by 3:30 in the morning, he is unconscious or dead. We're not sure, either one. He is laying in the street. Looks like someone had laid him out perfectly in the lane so he could get run over. He was not awake. He was not walking along the side of the road and a car wasn't paying attention and hit him. He didn't step out in front of the road, nothing. He was laid in the road. He was laid out in the road, and a car hit him approximately 3:30 in the morning. Now, this woman wasn't sure what she hit. It was really foggy. Her boyfriend was in a hurry. She was trying to get him to a meeting place so he could catch his carpool ride to St. Louis to work. He convinced her that it was a deer. She wasn't sure. She drove on, which she probably shouldn't have done that, but she drove on and dropped him off at the place where he was going to meet up with his carpool ride. And then she came back, and within that few minutes she came back, she noticed, yes, it was a body. Unfortunately, this area, it was hard to get cell phone signal, so she drove on to her house, which was only a couple miles away. And then she called the police at 4:03. There was another call, they said, came in at 4:06, and police were on scene by 4:08, according to some reports. Now, they said that the only thing, what happened when she came upon this scene, she jerked real hard to the left because she was trying to avoid the body. She ended up, her tire did hit Douglas's head, and but she swears that's all she hit. She didn't run over the center of him. Now, that's very important because later we're going to find out some very suspicious details about that. But in this whole concept, you would think that law enforcement would want to find out what happened to this boy. They would want to find out, was he dead before he got there? Why would he be laying in the road? It takes, at one point, law enforcement told this grieving mother that perhaps he just was tired and he lay down and fell asleep in the middle of the road. And we're talking, he was laying across the lane. He wasn't laying long ways. He was laying right across the lane. So you were going to have to run over part of him. You couldn't get around him. And so I am telling you one thing, it takes a lot of grit. If you were going, one person said, well, maybe he wanted to end it all, and that's the way he was going to do it. It takes a lot of grit to lay there and watch the car come at you, and not try to move. So I don't think that was a possibility. But she also said that when she jerked the car to the left, that she avoided the rest of him. So when we get to the autopsy, we're going to find that there's a whole lot of internal damage to this body, and yet there was nothing visible and the car didn't hit him there. So we're going to find out that there's some very suspicious things. And then, of course, we're talking about Fredericktown, and it seems like law enforcement there have no qualms about talking trash to the parents. They don't seem to have any empathy to these family members, and you get these family members who come away telling these horrendous stories of how they were mistreated by law enforcement. And so I'm gonna stop the overall, the overview there, and we can start the discussion. Cricket, what is the let's go over, first of all, when you hear hit and run accident, a person was hit by a car, what is the first concept that you come up with? What's the first idea you have? How could this happen? What's the first thing you think of?
if he were drunk and stumbling into the street, or even walking across the street, not paying attention to his surroundings because it was dark. We've heard that a lot, dark, foggy. But to lay down in the street, absolutely not. I've never even heard of anybody really hyped up on drugs that just lay down in the street.
I have heard of it. One person who was hyped up on drugs and came down off their psych medicine at the same time. And he stood in the middle of the street because he said the cops were coming. He called the cops because he was losing his mind, and he stood in the middle of the street because in his manic state, he felt like they couldn't see him.
Right.
And so he was standing on the yellow line, like, they can't miss me here, which doesn't make any sense. But he was in a manic episode. He was on drugs and he had come off of his psych meds at the same time. And so he was
That's a double, yeah.
So, but even in that state, he didn't lay down in the middle of the road.
Exactly.
So,
and I question too, why is the sheriff at the scene?
Well, I think that's because it's a small town and there wasn't a lot of options. They did make a big thing. Well, why did the sheriff come and not some of the other people? But you're talking a small town, a small county. They may have had other things, going on, and the sheriff was the only one available. So that's not all that suspicious to me.
Yeah, but him putting his opinion out there because he's not a coroner. Yeah. So for him to say what he said to, that just baffles me. Like,
yeah,
you can't.
Well, and in reality, most of the time, exactly, when you talk to law enforcement, they're very tight-lipped. They won't give you their opinion. They won't tell you what they think. They're going to keep it close until they get the evidence and the okay to say something. So for them to just come, and we'll talk about that here in a second, for them to just come and tell the mother what they think without any evidence, without any, that in itself is unprofessional. So, to find all of that is to me is disturbing. So basically what happened is, you also think, well, maybe, like you said, maybe he was drunk, maybe he was high, maybe they had a toxicology report done, and that tox report said that he was clean. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't doped up on anything. There was a slight trace of marijuana in his system. All of that was all that was in his system. There was nothing else. So that is, that's all there was. He wasn't high on anything. He wasn't drunk out of his mind. He wasn't, he didn't lay down in the road. Venus had a comment here. I'm going to read it. Just an interesting idea. I don't think that's what happened, but we're trying to come up with reasons why this boy would be in the road. And once we come up with all these reasons, then we'll see which one matches the evidence. I
wonder too, with so many cases out there where they put drugs as a possible reasoning. Now they couldn't do that with Douglas because
right. It seems like if there's drugs involved in any way, they think they can write it off and they don't have to do anything. Well, this one, they can't even use that as an excuse.
Or they would have.
I wonder if it was some sort of basically wonder if it was some sort of childish game, like a I dare you type of thing. And that could be something because teenagers always come up with stupid things to do like that. But in this case, again, if he was conscious and he seen a car coming, he would have moved. Barbara signed on. Thank you, Barbara. And Marianne signed on. Thank you for signing on. So basically, we're trying to come up with legitimate concepts of how this boy could be in the road, and none of them fit the narrative of this story. Tammy, I haven't heard much from you. Do you have any? Can you think of a logical explanation of why this boy would have laid down in the road?
I cannot.
See, to me, anybody that's level-headed, that's their answer.
Yeah, and that's it exactly, level-headed. There was only one case that I've been on where the woman, and there was an issue with her brain. She pretty much just stopped where she was. She sprained her ankle, we believe, and just sat there in the elements,
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
situations, I
Yeah.
can understand that, but not
Yeah.
in this situation.
Well, we've got a 19-year-old, very athletic boy who is doing well in his job, who's got a new girlfriend, who is, getting close to finishing high school, who's starting to get life together. He doesn't have any. There's no signs of any major mental health issues. There's no, he's not, schizophrenic or something that would make him think on a skewed plane. There's nothing like that in this case. You've got a boy who's very, sociable, and girls seem to kind of gravitate to him, and we think that that's going to be part in this. But basically, we have the witness statement of the woman driving the car and the man that was in the car with her that said she swerved real hard to the left and her tire hit the man's head. She did not hit the body. Okay. So we have that as a witness statement. Then we have the witness statement of the coroner. As he was doing the autopsy, he noted that the external view of the body, there was no trauma to the outside of the body. So it didn't look like from the neck down. Of course, the head was, we won't get into the details because I'm sure the mother would probably watch this, but the head's basically nothing left. But from the neck down, the body looked fine. And so this was especially noted in the autopsy. So we're going to come into dig into that a little bit. And we're going to find out, well, if that's the case, why do we have all these internal injuries? And we're going to go into that now. If you go and you read through the autopsy report, you'll find that he had a mid-sternal fracture, which to me, that could have two options there. He was hit extremely hard in the chest, could break your sternum there. But that could also happen from his head jerking back violently under the car. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it something else other than the car. But that's not all that's wrong. So he's got 3 broken ribs. His ribs weren't hit by the car, so they shouldn't be broken. He's got scattered pulmonary contusions along the right side. Scattered meaning he took more than one hit. Okay. It wasn't just one, it was a scattered pattern. So, that is, could be in line with someone's fist, someone's knuckles. He had liver lacerations. His left kidney was lacerations. He had multiple lacerations to his spleen, and he had a hemorrhage near the heart. And then we go into, and it gives you details, but total, I'm not going to go into all the details, but total, you've got 600 milliliters of internal bleeding. Okay. So this is where, when I was talking with, my team on the phone before we get on the videos, we kind of discuss things. To me, this is the open and shut of the case. This is the smoking gun that should make the police stand up and investigate something. Your heart does not keep beating. As soon as you're brain dead, your heart's dead too. Okay. That's the reason why they have different machines, running your lungs, running your heart, running all this when you're on life support. The reason being is as soon as your brain goes down, as soon as it goes dark, your heart and your lungs stop, because your subconscious is what keeps them going. So we're not like chickens that you can, behead a chicken and it runs around for 2 or 3 minutes before it realizes it's gone. We're not built that way. Our anatomy is completely different. When you go brain dead, your heart stops instantly. This boy bled internally for a good deal of time. to get 600 milliliters of fluid in his chest cavity. Okay. He had 600 milliliters of fluid in his chest cavity. That means he was bleeding internally for a good long while before he was hit by the car. So to me, that's the smoking gun. That's the end of the story, but we're going to get into all kinds of rumor mills. We're going to get into all kinds of conspiracy theories. This poor mother's house is going to burn down when she pitches too much of a fit. We've got a whole lot more story to tell. And to me, the story's over here. We are 10, 15 minutes into the show, 30 minutes into the show. And to me, that should be it. We should be done, because this proves to me, and should prove to anybody that has a logical thinking mind, if this boy was bleeding internally for a good deal of time before he was hit by the car, then that tells me something was wrong with him. He did not put himself into the road. Somebody else did. And so I don't know, girls, what's your opinion on it? You think I'm off track here, or do you think I'm crazy? Do you think that he should have bled internally after he was hit by the car?
No,
do you think I'm wrong?
No, you're not wrong. And I mean, the simple fact that, initially they could have thought, okay, hit and run. But once the injuries do not add up, investigation needs to begin. And that's what never happened.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It warrants an investigation. I mean,
well, to me, it seems like, that doesn't really make sense. We have spent a good deal of time, even being kind of facetious and goofy, coming up with all kinds of different scenarios of why this boy would end up in the road. Okay. None of them fit the narrative. And then we come up with this evidence of the autopsy, and that doesn't fit anything. So to me, that should wipe all of those theories off the board. And the only logical explanation was that man was placed there to cover up something else. And to me, that's the smoking gun. But then we're gonna jump into some timelines, and we're gonna jump into some different things here. But by 7:20 the next morning, the coroner and the law officers were on the porch of Karen, his mother, Doug's mother. And the deal with that is the coroner said that he believed Doug was dead before he was hit by the car. Okay. He said this standing on the front porch of the mother before he ever did an autopsy. So whether there's a conspiracy there or not, that is not professional. Okay. You should not tell the mother that you think he was dead before he was hit by the car before you know that. Okay. Before you look into the autopsy to prove that. Okay. So I believe he was telling the truth. And I believe just by looking at the body, he probably figured that out. But you shouldn't say that. That's not professional behavior until you get the evidence, So he says this. And then also immediately the law officer that's with him says, yes, he's dead, but there was no foul play involved. You don't know that yet. Now, if she had said, we don't think there was foul play involved, that's one thing. But she said there was no foul play involved. And either way, it's not professional behavior. You need to say, yes, we know he's deceased. We don't know what happened for sure. It looks like he's been hit by a car. We don't think foul play is involved. We are investigating. We have some questions for you. We don't know what to tell you yet. We don't have the answers. We will let you know as soon as we find out. An autopsy will tell us more. All of these things are standard responses that this mother did not receive from these law officers and officials that should have at least waited until they got evidence before they started spouting off their opinions. Okay. We'll go through the call logs. Do you have anything to say about that, Tammy, about what they said on the porch before we move on?
Nope.
Okay.
It makes sense.
Well, if you guys ever think I'm wrong on something, just call me out. We'll talk about it because I'm not one of those arrogant bums that think I know it all. I don't. I have gone over 300 cases, and you have to be pretty mentally challenged to not see patterns of behavior and patterns of evidence and patterns. After 300 cases, you start to kind of learn a few things, or at least I'd hope you think so. So, okay. At 1:47, there was a call from Doug to his girlfriend at the time. They talked for about 10 minutes. He said about 1:45, 1:47 that he was leaving George's house. She could hear the argument in the background, and he's like, I'm not dealing with it. I'm just leaving. So at 1:47 or so, he's taking out from George's house. Now at 1:58 is the last text message to the girlfriend. She said that they talked for about 10 minutes, and then he said his phone was dying, and so he said he could text, but he couldn't talk on the phone. He was trying to conserve his battery. So at 1:58 was the last time he texted back and forth to his girlfriend. At 1:57, he got a text message from Anderson's phone saying, hey man, I'm sorry I blew up, trying to smooth things over basically. And then immediately Doug says, hey, that's fine, no worries, but can you get my stuff back to me, because he left his stuff in Anderson's car. And so Anderson goes ahead and messages him 2 or 3 more times over the next 20-30 minutes, but he never gets a response back. So the last time Doug responded, or that we think it was him responding with his phone, was at 1:57. Okay, so basically he had been walking for 10 minutes, and then there was no more response from his phone, okay, from him that we know of. So basically close to 2 o'clock to 3:30, we've got an hour and a half timeline here that everything goes dark. We don't know specifically what was going on for Doug. He should have had a fairly straight shot to get home. He would go one way for a certain amount, and then he would turn once, and then he would finish the rest of his walk on that highway, and he should have been home. Like I said, there's a discrepancy. It's either 4.4 miles or right at 6 miles. Either way, by 3:30 in the morning, he should either been all the way home, or he should have been within, half a mile or so from home. Instead, at 3:30, his body is laid out across Highway 72, and he is hit in the road at 3:30. And where his body is hit, it's still 3 full miles from his house. So by 3:30, he should have been a whole lot closer to home. So something happened to him at the 3-mile marker. So what do we know? At the 3-mile marker, something happened. We don't know if somebody tried to pick him up and beat him up and then throw him out there. We don't know if somebody beat him up on the side of the road and threw him out there. There was a theory that he was driven around to here and to there, and was beaten here and beaten there, and was making a symbol out of him, because he had there was a argument over a girl, and they were going to make a big symbol out of him. You have to be careful when you start to get into the rumor mill. And this is something that I've gotten some hate from people. But trust me, I have run into people that mean well, but they don't actually have anything to say. They have a story that they've heard from so-and-so, and that little story was twisted a little bit from the so-and-so that they heard, and it may have gone through 15 people, and who knows how many of those people were doing drugs at the time, and yet all of a sudden now it's come through the rumor mill and it's supposed to be true. So when it comes to the rumor mill, you really have to put your logic into it and see if it makes sense. Okay. Not that I think that people would necessarily outright lie and say, I saw this, when they didn't, but it could be something more unintentional, like so-and-so said, did you see him at the party? I thought I did. Maybe. And then you think, well, maybe I did. I don't know. Maybe that, I don't know. Okay. So you really got to listen to the rumor mill, but you can't take it all as 100% fact. Okay. Here's the question that I put up. when it comes to they picked him up, they drove him around for 2 hours, beaten him senseless, and then threw him out beside the road. I have a hard time believing that because, and this is just me from an investigative standpoint, that doesn't fit in the timeline. Okay. From the time he left Anderson's house to the time he was hit was only an hour and a half. Okay. So we only have an hour and a half of time to fill. Now, do I believe that he was beaten in that time and laid out on the road? Yes. Do I believe he was driven all over town and beaten over and over again to make some kind of scene, make some kind of example out of him? I don't think so. Because how could they have gone to all of these several spots? Okay, they went to so-and-so's house, they went to this place, they went to that place, they beat him some more here, and they beat him some more there, and then they beat him here. And then they just kept him alive so they could beat him some more. How do they do all of that and then lay him out on the highway all in the same time frame of when he should have been able to make it home? Okay, so did they drop by one person's house and beat the snot out of him there? Maybe. They may have dropped by somebody's house, but did they take him all over town making an example out of him? That sounds a little bit fantastic. All of these stories, they get twisted into some, a fantasy type thing. And when you get into conspiracies, and hey, I love a good conspiracy. I'm conspiracy theory junk is like my junk food. I'm like, so I would love to jump down that rabbit hole. But when you're trying to investigate cold cases, you've got to try to hold that tinfoil hat and put it to the side and try to think in your fedora instead of your tinfoil hat. So do I think that he was beaten unmercifully? Yes. Do I think he was driven around for 2 hours and taken all over town to make an example of him? Probably not. Okay. He may have been taken to a place or two and then dropped off, but I do not believe he was taken all over town. Okay. So does that sound logical, Tammy? I mean, or is it just me?
It sounds logical. I'm wondering why someone else didn't give him a ride home. There was several people at the party.
Right.
Someone
So there could have been other people taking him home. See, to me, that was part of the thing. Doug was known to be somewhat of a ladies' man. The girls liked him, and he didn't have any problems, picking up a girlfriend. And there was one point where there is some known, the mother calls them bullies, around town that are too old to be hanging around with a bunch of teenagers. They're 10 years older. And at one point, this older person was dating a teenage girl. And this older person threatened Doug. When she started dating Doug, he started threatening Doug. Okay. Now, there is a theory that Anderson actually set him up because Doug is now with the girlfriend that this other person wanted or something. And I wouldn't put it past them. People have been killed for less. I know that sounds terrible, but people have been killed for less. So could there be some drug fueled, messed up mind that would kill a human being over an ex-girlfriend? Oh yeah, definitely. So to me, that is part of the rumor mill that is somewhat logical that you can take.
And they definitely wanted him to die because they didn't just beat him up and.
Right. I mean, they were going to finish him off one way or another. And to me, what really is disturbing, and I'm trying not to get too gruesome here. They don't know that he wasn't shot in the head because there wasn't enough left of his head to see if there was a bullet hole in it. You know what I mean? So they're trying to write this off as, well, maybe when an officer says, well, maybe to the mother, well, maybe he just laid down and went to sleep. Why the heck would he do that on the road? If he was tired, he could lay down in the ditch and go to sleep. Why would he go to sleep when he's only got 2 more miles or 3 more miles to the house?
And why
Yeah,
would a police
and with the
officer
with this 22-year-old also, I mean, there is major control issues with him over this girl. So, I mean, that alone.
Yeah. And so to me, it seems like
like you can't talk to her, don't
Right.
look at her, don't
Yeah.
sit by her.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here going, this is what I don't get. People want to keep, if this was the case, this girl ended up with Doug instead of this other guy, and you were angry about it. Why are you blaming just the guy? It takes 2, Why aren't you blaming the girl too? So to me that, that never makes sense. It takes 2, you got to blame them both. You can't just blame one of them. But anyways, that's a side note to get off, that we can get off on the deep end here. But so this is what I want to bring forth now. There has been, right after this incident, there was 4 different witnesses come forward that said to the sheriff that they said, look, we think this is foul play. Okay. And the reason is so and so has stated that he wanted to kill Doug because of this girl. 4 different people have come forward and said. So Mr. Wood, which is the person that everybody was saying had threatened Doug, he comes forward and says he came forward to the police and offered a statement. Okay. Now, to me, when you are looking to if you study trying to see if people are lying or not, you pay attention to what they don't say as much as what they do say. Okay. Now, the first thing, he comes in and says he's upset. He does not say he's upset because a teenager he knows is dead. No. He says he's upset about all of the rumors around town that are blaming him for the death of this teenager. So he doesn't say he's upset because somebody he knew and grew up with, somebody in that town, somebody, to me, if I was raised in a small town, when we got up to 4,000 people, we thought we was a big city. So, I mean, it was a really small town. And if one of the teenagers, I remember 2 teenagers were hilltopping. And it was just before graduation. And they were going 120 miles an hour and they lost control and they hit a tree and they died. The entire community just tore apart because of these 2 boys. And that is a normal behavior for a small town or a small community, for the whole community to mourn. So when it came to graduation was just a terrible, sad ordeal because everybody, we had it was basically turned into a memorial service for these 2 teenage boys, and yet you've got this he's a little older than the rest of them, but he comes in and says, I'm upset. Not that this poor kid died on the highway. He's upset because, oh, well, they're saying bad things about me. Now, how narcissistic is that? So to me, that's an omission right there. When he says he's upset about what it's making him look bad instead of him being upset about this human being that's dead in the road. So to me, that shows kind of the personality of the person we're dealing with here. Do you agree?
Yes, 100%. Anybody who makes all situations about them, there's an issue.
I agree. Well, and this is something drastic too. This isn't just hey, this is a rumor that's going around. This is something drastic. So, so he denied that he even really knew Doug, and he denied having any previous conflicts with Doug, and he blamed all of these rumors were started by his ex-girlfriend. But then you couldn't. They supposedly investigated this guy, but his girlfriend gave him an alibi, said that he was with her all night. Now, to me, that is the worst alibi ever. Oh yeah, I slept over at my girlfriend's house. I'm like, did anybody see you sleep over at your girlfriend's house? Was her parents there? Was a sibling there? To me, that's not a real strong alibi. It's one person who is romantically involved with you. So of course they're going to say something to back you up. So I'm curious now, because he's probably not still with that girlfriend, if that girlfriend would still provide him an alibi now. But of course, nobody's investigating, so nobody's going to ask her anything. And so to me, I would go back, because it's been all these years later. I would go back and see if the girlfriend's still going to, if the girlfriend is still going to say something and say, because a lot of times they will recant that. What do you girls think about that?
What gets me is there's all these things that are not right about this case, and the mother sees all this, and she can't get justice. She can't get the police to investigate. And it's another pattern of Fredericktown that just keeps happening, and it just...
Well, and this is what really, really bothers me, is they have just kind of labeled the mother as a troublemaker, because she won't accept the police's narrative and just go home and shut up. That's what they want. Let me read some of these comments. I've got a whole bunch of them. Marion says, you're doing a great job. Thank you. We appreciate that, Marion. Bobby says, Venus says, why are the police not considering the possibility of foul play? The more I hear, the more I believe foul play. I agree. There should be an investigation regardless. Billy Rash, absolutely. Barbara Hall says, sad, and Doug lost his life. It is absolutely sad. Marion says, 4,000 people would cover a lot of ground. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, 4,000 people could really do a search. 4,000 people, if they would band together and stand up, then they could demand an investigation. 4,000 people can do a lot of things. Joanne says, maybe he threatened the girlfriend if she said anything. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's definite, that's the reason why I don't take the girlfriend's alibi as it. But since that was the alibi he got, they didn't investigate him no more. I'm like, okay, that police work 101,
And the sad thing is, in this little place, everybody is afraid to talk.
Mm-hmm.
But if everybody came together, what are the police gonna do?
Exactly. Well, and to me, this is what's really sad is Karen, Doug's mom, is from that town.
Mm-hmm.
She's not. See, a lot of these other cases, we are talking about somebody from outside of town being brought into town and then died suspiciously, and then so you've got an outsider coming in trying to investigate their child's murder, and so they're kind of pushed away as an outsider. This is an insider.
Yeah,
Karen
and they've turned away FBI to help on cases. Like, what needs to be done for another totally outside source to come in and totally investigate that police department?
Absolutely.
Because it's got to go.
Yeah. Okay, so we are getting close to the hour, and we could talk about the rumor mill so much more, but I want to bring up one more thing. I am going to do a book giveaway before we get off here, so everybody stay on, even though we're done with the case. I'm doing a giveaway. One more thing that this poor mother has got to go through, besides everything else. I mean, we could talk about this case for hours. 4 months after her son's death, her house is lit on fire. Her house burns to the ground, and she tries to get help, and nobody will help her. Her house burns down. They don't want to investigate it. They don't think foul play. They say, oh, well, it must have been an electric heater in the bathroom. There were 2 people in the house. She and a child was gone. But her husband and another child was there. And yet they didn't see anything. They didn't do anything. All of a sudden, it was just everything was engulfed in flames. And so I'm wanting to know why this person, who is a local, she's lived in this town for decades. She said when her house went up in smoke, she lost 50 years of her history in that house. So she'd been there for a long time. She was a local. She was one of them. She even went to the mayor and tried to get help, and the mayor pushed her off. The law enforcement pushed her off. The coroner pushed her off. Everyone pushed her away. And this was the town that she grew up in. I mean, I don't know if she was born there, but she lived there for a very good long time. And so the house going up in smoke was very suspicious, because guess what the mother had been doing? Law enforcement wasn't collecting evidence. She went back to the crash site. She found a torn up t-shirt. I believe they said it had blood on it, didn't it? Didn't she say it had blood on it, girls?
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think she said it
Yeah.
was torn up, bloody piece of t-shirt. And she kept it because she thought it might be important. She had been going and talking to people and taking their information. She had been collecting her own evidence and storing it in that house. So it's very suspicious when the police aren't collecting evidence. They've already written it off. They've got their story. They've got what they want. They've got all of their reports all written out, neatly tied up with a bow. The case is over. They're done. But the mom is not buying into the narrative, because the facts don't buy into the narrative either. And so she's collecting evidence and storing it in this house. And then all of a sudden, 4 months later, this house goes up in smoke. Now, if that's not suspicious, I don't know what is. I mean, to me, that is the deliberate act of violence to try to shut her up.
Yes,
You
and
guys think
they
so? Or do you
got her
think
out of town, and I think they wanted that too.
Yep, they ran her out of town.
Well, she couldn't get any help, and they thought that she would sit down and shut up, and she wouldn't. And that's where it comes. And that's not the end of her story. There's all kinds of other legal issues and stuff that comes up afterwards. And we could go on this story for hours. There's all kinds of rumor mills. There's all kinds of, and some of the rumor mills sound true. Some of them I kind of not sure about.
And
but
none of these mothers are going to shut up. None of them.
No. Well, and to me, I'm sitting here going, what if it was you? You know, you go into this sheriff's office and the sheriff says, well, the mom's just being unrealistic. The mom just needs to sit down and shut up and take our story. What if she was the murder victim? What if the sheriff was killed? Would that sheriff want her own mother to give up on her? No, she wouldn't. You know, so I'm sitting here going, how dare you? The mother is the one person that shouldn't give up on you. You know what I mean? And yet she's trying to force this mother to give up on her child when nothing makes sense. Today's episode is brought to you by Bones Coffee Company. You can forget about boring coffee when you drink Bones Coffee. Not only do they offer a variety of flavors such as strawberry cheesecake and maple bacon, they are a family-owned company that puts great detail not only in their coffee, but in the artwork that comes on each individual bag. Bones Coffee has a coffee club that will deliver your favorite coffee to your door every month. If that wasn't enough, they also have some amazing swag to offer. Check out Bones Coffee Company today. I'll have my affiliate links in the show notes for you.